Since the Great Depression, buying a house has almost always been preferred over renting. For generations, the conventional wisdom said that renting is wasting money. But what about now? In the current real estate market, the American dream of buying a home is much harder than it used to be. Housing prices are through the roof. Interest rates are higher than they've been in years, and we're still dealing with a serious lack of supply. So because of all of these factors, it really begs the question, if you can afford to buy a house in the current market conditions, is it even worth it? When we talk about renting versus buying, the first thing we need to do is compare costs. In a complete 180 from what we've always been told, right now, renting is actually cheaper than buying in most of the United States. Between median rent costs and median homeowner costs for those with mortgages, tenants actually came out ahead of owners by $563 per month. Now, a big part of this is that the cost of buying a home is not just the down payment and the mortgage that most people think of, which is already pretty substantial. The median U.S. home price in 2023 was around $420,000 according to Redfin, and the average mortgage interest rate right now at the time of this recording is around 7%. If you're using a conventional loan and putting 20% down, that makes your down payment $84,000 and your mortgage payment around $2,200 a month. And don't get me wrong, having a fixed interest rate is a major benefit because it makes your mortgage payment relatively predictable, unlike renting where your landlord can raise your rent by some unknown percentage when you go to renew your lease. But the true cost of homeownership is actually much higher. First up is closing costs. And these can range from 2 to 5% of the purchase price, which means an additional $8,400 to $21,000 for the median home. This is on top of your down payment and includes fees for your loan application, home inspection, appraisal, and title search or attorney fees depending on your state. Altogether, this brings your total upfront cost to around $100,000. Right off the bat, this upfront cost is something that you don't have to worry about when renting, and it's part of the reason why it can take 5 to 10 years just to recoup those upfront costs of buying. With renting, the biggest upfront cost is the security deposit, which you will get back as long as you don't wreck the place. And this is just another reason why it doesn't really make sense when people say that renting is throwing away money, but buying a house isn't, because the initial cost of buying these closing costs are also throwing away money. Next, we have property taxes. The monthly mortgage payment of $2,200 that I talked about earlier is just the principal and interest. It did not include property taxes. Property taxes are super different depending on where you live, but the average effective property tax in the US is 1.1% of the home's value. This means for the median priced home, you would be paying on average $385 a month in property taxes, bringing your total monthly cost to $2,600. And don't forget, property taxes go up as your home's value goes up. Another big expense for homeowners is maintenance and repair costs. When you own a home, you are responsible for all repairs. Leaky faucet, broken appliances, you name it, all of those things are things that you will have to pay for that renters do not. On average, homeowners spend 1% of their home's value on maintenance and repairs every single year. This means another $350 a month for the median priced home, bringing your total cost to $3,000 a month. You'll also need to factor in the cost of homeowners insurance, which on average costs around $100 a month. And while it's definitely a great idea to have renter's insurance if you're a renter, the average cost of that is only $150 for the entire year. And last but certainly not least, if you live in a community with a homeowners association, you're going to have to pay monthly dues, and those average around $200 a month. But they can be much higher depending on your neighborhood. Plus, if your community has to replace all of the siding on the buildings or redo all of the roofs, you could be looking at a $10,000 plus special assessment. So with all of these added costs, it's pretty clear that owning a home is a lot more complex and nuanced than just a monthly mortgage payment. People like to say that renting is throwing away money, but you definitely throw away a lot of money buying a home too. That $2,200 a month is actually more like $3,200 a month when you actually run the numbers and add all these miscellaneous costs. And it's a big part of the reason why a lot of people believe that it's always better to buy, even in situations where that's just not true. And you can argue that the costs are baked in when renting, so you're going to pay them anyway, but there are markets where the cost of renting is so much lower that it really doesn't even matter. Now, despite the high costs, one of the reasons why some people still lean towards buying is because of its contribution to their net worth. Owning a home is a form of forced savings, and your house is kind of like a bank account that you get to live in. Every month, a portion of your mortgage payment goes towards the principal, which increases your net worth because you're building equity in your home. If your house is worth the median price of $420,000 and you pay down your mortgage to $220,000, you have $200,000 worth of equity in your house. And then if your home appreciates in value, you'll unlock even more. Home prices in the US have been going up for 11 consecutive years. In 2021 alone, housing prices increased by 18%, which was the highest jump on record. However, when you zoom out and compare housing appreciation to the stock market, real estate starts to look less impressive. From 1992 to 2020, the average US home appreciated 3.8% per year. But during the exact same time, the US stock market returned on average 10% per year. This makes the American dream of locking up a bunch of money into your primary residence as an investment a lot less compelling of an argument, especially when there are other ways to grow your net worth and buy equity, like investing in the stock market that has historically provided higher returns. Using a rent versus buy calculator, let's say you're living in San Francisco and you're looking at buying a house with an average price of $1.25 million. Your 20% down payment is $250,000 and your mortgage payment is around $7,000 a month. In this scenario, you would need to live in that house for at least 18 years before buying made more sense than renting. But what happens if you only live there for 5 years and then you decide to sell? Well, the renter's net worth would actually be $100,000 ahead of yours. By renting an apartment for $5,000 a month during that same 5-year period, taking that $250,000 down payment and investing it in the stock market instead, and then continuing to invest that $2,000 a month difference, you would have more than $500,000. Not to mention, if you're buying in a super hot market where people are bidding tens of thousands of dollars over asking and waiving inspections, you're even less likely to come out ahead as the buyer in that scenario. Now, I gotta say, these numbers are going to change depending on where you live. It depends on what houses cost in that area, what rent costs in that area, how much are homes appreciating in that area, and how much is rent increasing. And of course, it also depends on how long you plan to live there, because the longer you stay in your home, the more it makes sense to buy. It would be literally impossible for me to run every single scenario, so make sure you plug your own numbers into a rent versus buy calculator and figure out what makes the most sense for you. Okay, so we've established that real estate might not always provide the highest returns, but it does provide a certain level of stability that other investments do not. One of the strongest arguments for buying, in my opinion, is that when we compare the cost to rent versus buy, we usually aren't comparing apples to apples. In some markets, you can rent a 1-bedroom, 600 square foot apartment for $2,100 a month, but you could buy a 3-bedroom house with a garage for $2,500. You probably could not rent that 3-bedroom house with a garage for $2,500 a month if you wanted to. And for a lot of people, they would rather buy the home, pay the extra $400 a month to have the privacy of a single family house, and also be able to make changes and do renovations whenever they wanted. Owning your home means having a tangible asset that you can enjoy and use while you're building equity and while it appreciates in value, and it's pretty hard to put a dollar amount on that benefit. For some people, the perks of homeownership make all the added costs worth it, even if buying is substantially more expensive. So let's summarize by breaking down the pros and cons of renting versus buying. One of the major pros of renting that we haven't talked about yet is the flexibility that comes with it. If you decide you want to move out of the area, you don't have to list your home and hope you make some money, and you're not beholden to the real estate market at any given time. You can just pack your things and go at the end of your lease. We already mentioned that you don't have to fix what isn't yours, which saves you tons of money on repairs and maintenance. And since renting is significantly cheaper than buying right now in a lot of areas, you can potentially walk away with higher returns by renting and investing the difference. We've covered a lot of the benefits of home buying. There's the stability of fixed mortgage payments, being able to make changes and improvements, having control of your living situation, using your home as forced savings, and of course, the potential for appreciation. How much money these pros are worth depends on what you value. But one benefit we haven't mentioned yet are the tax breaks that the IRS gives to homeowners. You can sell your primary residence and avoid paying capital gains taxes on the first $250,000 of your profits if your tax filing status is single, and up to $500,000 if married filing jointly. And you can do this every 2 years. You cannot do this when selling stocks in the stock market, and having the ability to pocket $500,000 tax-free is a pretty big deal. Another potential tax benefit of homeownership is the mortgage interest deduction. This allows you to reduce your taxable income by the amount you paid in mortgage interest during the year. However, you can only do this if you itemize. You cannot do this if you take the standard deduction, which means that this does not apply to most people. Another pro for owners is that you generally can't panic sell a house the way that you can panic sell stocks. It is a lot harder to list your house and find a buyer and get to closing than it is to click a button on your phone. For people who are especially prone to making split-second investment decisions, real estate is kind of an easy fix for that. And finally, there is definitely a sense of pride that comes with homeownership, and who knows, maybe this feeling has been sold to us by the real estate industry, which stands to make a lot of money from us buying and selling houses. But it definitely does feel like a major achievement to own the roof over your own head, and that's just not necessarily a feeling that you get to have as a renter. So, based on all of the data and everything we just considered, how do we answer the question, is buying a house still worth it in 2024? Well, the answer is, it depends. It depends on your financial situation, on your lifestyle preferences, and your long-term money goals. Buying a house is not just about the mortgage payment. It's about understanding all of these less obvious costs and benefits, and then making a decision that aligns with you. As it has always been, and as it always will be, there just is no blanket statement that applies to everyone. So I can't tell you what's best for you. So you tell me. In your situation, do you think buying a house is still worth it anymore? Are you renting? Are you planning on buying in the future? What do you think? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.